You've watched birds do this your whole life. You've probably pointed at the sky and said, "Oh, look at that," already, and kept walking. But here's the thing, what you were actually looking at wasn't cute. It was one of the most efficient machines in the natural world, running at full speed, right above your head. Why a V and not a circle, not a straight line? Who picks the front? What happens when the leader gets tired? Do birds that fly solo actually die younger? And why does this exact same trick show up in Tour de France pelotons, fighter jet squadrons, and marathon packs? The V isn't a coincidence. It's a machine, and here's exactly how it works. Start with what it actually is. The V formation is a group of birds flying in two diagonal lines, spreading back from a single bird at the front, each bird slightly behind and to the side of the one ahead. Simple shape. You've seen it over a lake at sunset or high up on a cold morning, usually geese, sometimes pelicans, sometimes ibises. You assumed it was instinct, like birds just do that, the way they peck at things and build nests without being taught. And you're half right, it is instinct. But the reason behind the instinct is pure physics. And the physics part? That's where it gets genuinely weird. Here's what most people think. The birds are following a leader. The strongest one goes first, the rest fall in line, and the whole flock moves like a feathery military convoy. Makes sense. Looks organized. Feels like there's a boss bird with a flight plan, but that story is missing the entire point. The V has nothing to do with following. It's about harvesting energy that would otherwise vanish completely into thin air, energy that a solo bird loses forever on every single wing beat of a 3,000-mile journey. Every bird except the one at the very front is riding a wave, an invisible wave made of rising air, created by the bird directly ahead. Think of it like this. When a bird pushes its wing down to stay airborne, that motion shoves air downward and outward. But right off the tip of each wing, the air curls back upward, a spinning column of rising air called upwash, completely invisible. You can't feel it from the ground. But for a bird flying slightly behind and to the side, that upwash is a free elevator. The air is already going up. The bird just rides it. Less flapping, less muscle work, free lift, the same way a hawk circles lazily over a hot road without beating its wings once, borrowing rising air that was already there. Here's where it gets crazy. Scientists at the Royal Veterinary College in London proved this in 2014. They attached tiny data loggers, fitness trackers about the size of a large coin, onto a flock of northern bald ibises and recorded every single wing beat during real open-air flight. What they found was something nobody had fully predicted. The birds weren't just flying inside the upwash zone, they were actively timing their wing beats to sync with the air. Wave coming off the bird directly in front, millisecond precision. Every flap tuned to match the rhythm of the rising air, squeezing out maximum lift on every stroke. That's not simple follow-the-leader behavior. That's real-time adjustment happening inside a bird brain at hundreds of beats per minute, sustained across hours of flight and thousands of miles. The energy savings land at roughly 20 to 30% per bird compared to flying alone. On a migration of 3,000 miles, which many geese complete twice a year, that gap is survival math. A flock of 25 birds in proper formation collectively saves enough energy to cover several hundred additional miles together. That's like your entire road trip group sharing one gas tank and rolling into the destination with the needle still off empty. But here's a contrast worth knowing, because people mix these two things up constantly. You've also seen the other bird spectacle, the massive swirling black cloud of thousands of starlings folding and twisting across the evening sky like living smoke. That's called a murmuration. On the surface, it looks related. Lots of birds moving together, coordinated and almost hypnotic, but it's doing something completely different. A murmuration has no fixed shape, no forward destination, and zero interest in saving energy. Each starling tracks roughly 7 neighbors at once and adjusts instantly to avoid gaps. The result is a constantly reshaping swarm that makes it nearly impossible for a predator to lock onto a single target. A hawk diving into that cloud has nothing solid to aim at. The shape shifts faster than the attack. It's a defense system, a living shield. The V formation is a fuel system, a long-range engine built for endurance over enormous distances. One is armor built for survival in the moment. One is a machine built for survival over thousands of miles. Same skies, completely different problems being solved. Humans noticed the V for centuries before anyone could explain it. Ancient hunters in Egypt tracked migratory bird patterns to predict seasonal changes. Sailors used passing flocks as rough navigation signals hundreds of miles from shore, but the mechanical explanation stayed out of reach because nobody could see what the air was actually doing. That began shifting in the early 1900s when aviation engineers building the first biplanes kept running into a frustrating problem. Air curling off wingtips was creating extra drag and making planes harder to control. That curling air, the same upwash, was the enemy in early aircraft design. One version of the story describes an engineer around 1914 deep in the wingtip drag problem who looked out the window and saw a V of geese sliding silently across the autumn sky. The birds weren't fighting the wingtip effect. They were sharing it, passing it down the line so every bird except the leader could use it for free lift. Nature had solved the problem by turning it into a shared resource. But even that insight didn't reveal the full story. The 2014 IBIS study exposed the layer nobody expected, the millisecond wingbeat synchronization. The birds weren't just positioning themselves in the right zone, they were tuning their muscle movements to the airwave ahead the way a drummer locks onto a rhythm, except the rhythm is invisible and moving at flight speed. That finding changed how researchers think about bird migration entirely. This is the part everyone misses. You've been watching this same physics work silently in places you'd never connect to a bird. Tour de France cyclists ride in tight packs called pelotons. Riders in the middle save over 30% of their energy compared to the person grinding at the front. Same pressure zone, same free ride. Air Force fighter jets fly in fingertip formation. 4 jets spread diagonally, each sitting in slightly reduced drag from the one ahead, a layout directly shaped by bird aerodynamics research. Open water swimmers in triathlons tuck behind faster competitors in the early stages, riding the pressure wave through the water, then break away when it counts. Marathon runners cluster in pace groups for the first 20 miles, letting front runners absorb the wind while the pack banks energy for the final stretch. Long-haul trucking companies are now building automated convoy systems where semi-trucks drive in precise sequence. Trailing trucks burn measurably less fuel per mile, spacing managed by computer. Fish schooling against a current synchronize their tail movements to harvest energy from water vortices left by the fish ahead, the identical trick running in liquid instead of air. Ducklings swimming behind their mother ride the surface pressure wave she generates. You've seen this dozens of times without connecting it to aerodynamics. Pelicans flying over open oceans skim so close to the water surface they harvest extra lift from the thin cushion of air trapped between their wings and the water below. Commercial airliners route along the jet stream, the fast river of wind at 35,000 feet, saving enormous fuel on long routes. The same free energy harvest principle at a scale large enough to affect your ticket price. Engineers building self-driving electric vehicles are coding convoy logic into highway driving systems, automated formation spacing to extend range without adding a single extra battery. The invisible rising air off a goose wing and the pressure zone behind an 18-wheeler on the interstate are solving the same equation. One has been running it for millions of years. Now here's the part nobody talks about. The bird at the very front of the V gets absolutely nothing. No upwash, no free lift, full energy burn, every wing beat from scratch, while every bird behind it quietly collects the savings. And the formation only holds at the right size. Spread the V too wide and birds at the far ends drift out of range of any useful upwash and the efficiency collapses. Therefore, the whole system breaks down if one bird stays at the front for the full journey. So geese rotate. When the lead bird starts losing pace, it peels off to one side, drops back, and slots into an open position further down the line. A new bird steps into the front gap automatically. No signal, no call. It just happens. This isn't generosity. It's mechanical necessity. A permanent leader would slow down and drag the whole system into inefficiency. The rotation keeps the engine running. Researchers also think this explains why lone birds separated mid-migration will sometimes join formations of completely different species rather than fly solo, not for company, but for the math. Flying alone burns dramatically more energy, and the bird's body appears to seek any available formation to offset that cost. The V isn't cute. It's a rotating, self-correcting, energy-sharing network built on fluid dynamics, quietly solving one of the hardest problems in physics since long before humans had words for lift or drag. The bird in front isn't a leader, it's paying the debt. Every bird behind it is cashing in.